area of education. And you know that the WASI results have been released and it's become a subject of discussion because some 72% of those who sat the exam are being deemed as having failed. Government says that is a wrong interpretation to put to it. It's not exactly correct. I'll start that one with Felix.
Well, right away, the assertion that 72% of candidates who sat for the 2013-2014 WASI failed is totally erroneous. In fact, there's a benchmark that is used to assess who has failed. And there are grades that if you obtained, you would have been said to have failed. And gentlemen and lady, I will urge you from this point to just go straight to your points and make them, because we have very limited time. Now, the West African Examination Council, when it released this year's results, said that 28.10% of candidates obtained between grades A1 and C6 in 6 subjects, including maths, science, and English or social studies, depending on the preference of that particular student. And these are people who are eligible to access university education. That is not the same as saying that only 28% passed, because there are people who got 5 A1s and 1 D7 who cannot be said to have failed, but they may be unable to access university education because D7 is not part of the requirements to enter university. So we must put that in proper context. The other point that I wish to raise is that this year's performance is actually an improvement over last year's performance, because last year 19.15% passed. In fact, in 2006, just 12.5% obtained between A1 and C6. In 2007, 10.5% obtained A1 to C6. And then in 2008, 12.95% obtained A1 to C6. So those who could not qualify to enter universities at the time was much more than today. I agree that it is preferable to have a situation where, say, more than 50% or even 60% obtain between A1 and C6 and are able to access university education. That is not a point that we can run away from. But to suggest that 72% have failed is simply inaccurate. Again, there's even a bigger problem of access to university education.
So what you're saying is that the accurate statement to make is that 72% have failed to make a university grade.
Absolutely, but that is not failing in the examinations. The two are not the same. Again,
what's the wish of most, if not every, students' SS?
Of course, the wish of, well, it may not necessarily be the wish, because there are people who simply don't put in enough effort to warrant gaining access to tertiary education. But if you make a minimum, in the past they would say that if you got a grade 24 or better, a friend of mine used to joke that they always pick the better and left the 24 anyway. But if you made that grade, then you were eligible to enter university. In fact, it is still the same. If you converted A1 to C6, I'm sure you would arrive at that figure. But the problem is that there's limited space in our universities, even as government has made efforts over the years to expand space. For instance, when the University of Health and Allied Sciences reopens in September, they'll be admitting the first batch of 50 medical students to pursue medicine. That is the product of an expansion drive by government. And the Eastern University is also something that we are working seriously on towards establishing. The University of Energy and Natural Resources is also there and is leading to an increase in the number of people who access university education. But mind you, there are other tertiary institutions like the polytechnics and colleges of education who are able to offer what they call access courses. In other words, they allow these students who get D7 to write access courses that then enable them gain access to these institutions. So it is not the case that if you don't get A1 to C6, then you are eternally damned. You cannot pursue tertiary education. But government is conscious of the need to create opportunities for as many of our students as possible to be able to access tertiary education. We continue to work stringently on that. But let us not deliberately misrepresent the figures for especially partisan gain. I don't think that it helps anybody at all.
Right. Yeah. Kweku, what has been your understanding of the release as was put out by WAEC itself in respect of this subject?
Well, look, I've heard the explanation given by Felix here, and indeed I think much earlier I heard the Education Minister herself explaining the figures, the percentages and things. And I have to be honest, the initial report that I had gave me a different twist. You know, I really took to the 72% failure as the authentic report, but apparently that was not true. So I have revised my stand. I believe what the Minister of Education, the explanation she gave was is more credible, you know, and I accept that. But I've been asking myself whether the situation is really what we want as a nation. Bottom line, I don't think it's impressive. If you look at the kind of resources, logistics that we are being told have been invested in the education sector over the years, and especially in recent years, then I'm not too sure that we are producing sufficient resource. So for me, that's where the focus should be. We should be looking at how we can seek greater improvement in all these percentages and figures. And unfortunately for you, I don't have the competent in terms of professional or technical understanding to provide any prescriptions. But clearly, that is not what as a nation we should be proud of. So the arguments and counter-arguments that sometimes are so politicized, really, I think, is not going to give us any incentive to look for the solutions. That is my position at this stage. I don't have much to add to it.
Right. As like the statement issued by Mrs. Agnes Kujo, WAEC Principal Public Affairs Officer, and published by the GNA on Monday, announced that the release of the provisional results of the 2014 May-June WASI. It said of the total number of candidates that took part in the examination conducted in 809 schools, 126,921, representing 52.41%, were males, and 115,241, representing 49.59%, were females. The statement said a total of 1,447, representing 0.95% of the candidates registered were absent during the exams. The statement also said, following reports of examination malpractices and conclusions of investigations, the entire results of 321 candidates, 321 candidates have been cancelled, while 1,994 had their subject results cancelled. Additionally, the entire results of candidates presented by 36 schools have been withheld, while investigation is going on into all of them. But the bigger issue has to do with what has attracted media attention, that 72% quote-unquote failed.
I think in the GNA report which was put out, it started by saying that the West African Exams Council said that out of 242,162 candidates that sat for the 2014 WASI exam, 68,062, i.e. 28.11%, qualified for tertiary admissions. These candidates obtained grade A1 to C6 in at least 6 subjects, including English language and mathematics. What has generated the controversy is the lack of consistency in the information being put out by the Exams Council to enable comparative analysis to be done of previous results. Because what they're saying what is the import of the information they put out? Are they only interested in those who qualified for admission to tertiary institutions, or the number of students who obtained passes in 6 subjects, including maths and English? I don't know, judging by the information that they put out. Now, in previous years, the information they've told us was the number, the percentage which passed in, or the number and the percentage which passed in various numbers of subjects. So they would start by those who got passes in 8 subjects, 7 subjects, 6 subjects, and all that. So you can compare effectively. What is happening now is we're probably talking at cross purposes. People are talking about admissions to tertiary institutions. People are talking about passes in 6 subjects or more. But if we interrogate what they put out to mean that those who passed, who got grade A to C6 in 6 of their subjects, including maths and English, and even leave out the tertiary bit, then we're not doing well at all. And it cannot be the best performance that we've ever witnessed, as has been put out by some government communicators. Because let's just go through what the information has been. If 28% passed in 6 subjects in 2014, and in 2004, we are told by the Exams Council itself that 40% passed in 7 subjects and above, and that's a GNA report that they put out themselves on 22nd March. I think you could help us by getting the Exams Council, not the Minister for Education, who is a political appointee and definitely would want to put her government in the best light. We don't want to do politics with the education of our students. So let's get the information from the source itself, i.e. the Exams Council, and they're there. Madam Agnes Aja Kojo was that her name?
Agnes Kojo
is the public affairs officer who's been giving us this information. I quote what they said in 2004, that 38,718 students out of 96,668, i.e. 40%, passed in 7 subjects and above. 10,281, i.e. 11% passed in 6 subjects. So you put the 2 together, 11 plus 40% is 51% passed in 6 subjects and above. Okay, that's for 2004. In 2005, they said out of 11,012, 229 candidates, 49,140, i.e. 44%, passed in 7 subjects and above. In 2007, they said that 36,386 out of 133,574, i.e. 27%, passed in 8 subjects, while 25,000, i.e. 47% passed in 7 subjects and above. So if we're not comparing apples and oranges, and we have the similar statistics from the various years, then we can do a proper analysis, because per their own information which they've put out, in 2007, 47% passed in 7 subjects and above. In 2005, 44% passed in 7 subjects and above. In 2004, 40% passed in 7 subjects and above. How many passed in 7 subjects and above in 2014? Then we can have a proper conversation. But now they're throwing figures about that only 19% passed in 2008.
No, 2013.
Oh, 2013. Okay. But 28% cannot be the best performance we've had over the years.
Since 2006.
When we have had,
when
we have had 47% pass in 7 subjects and above in 2007.
Apples and oranges.
So please, let us do the proper comparison, and then we would be doing the Ghanaian people a good service. But I can't agree more with Kweku that we can't be happy with these results and pat ourselves on the back that this is the best performance we've had so far. Really? We are consigning our children to a very uncertain future.
Okay.
If we do not give them the proper foundation to give them a good start in life by assisting them to at least have a certificate that they can continue to the next stage in life with.
Okay. Omane, what do you say? And we end that discussion there. Continue to look at the UTAG strike as well. We'll be talking to the lawyer for the UTAG and check how soon they are also likely to get back to school, because as we know, the universities are still closed.
Thank you very much, Samson. Samson, I think that the approach to statistics, figures, when they are thrown out there, which even culminated in the earlier topic that we discussed, going to court and all that, must be looked at critically. And because of that, I decided to bring this textbook, a first course 6th edition in statistics, written by Sanders and Smith. And in the chapter 2, which is thinking critically about data.
Sanders and Smith, which edition is this?
This is the 6th edition.
Okay.
Yeah. Thinking critically about data, liars, and a few statisticians. They summarize the chapter by saying that, and I'll quote just a few of them, many have uncritically accepted statistical conclusions only to discover later that they've been misled. I'll jump.
419 scam start.
Poorly worded.
Please, let's allow him.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Poorly worded and or slanted questions may be used to gather data. It goes on, you should be aware of the bias that may exist in the information you are asked to accept. It goes on to say that consumers of statistical information must be alert to the argument that because B follows A, B was caused by A, erroneous cause and effect conclusions are often drawn because of the misuse of quantitative facts. Failing to define terms, making improper or illogical comparisons, using an alleged statistical fact to jump to a conclusion, using jargon and lengthy words to cloud a message, all these antics with semantics are used to confuse and mislead. Also, assuming that because a pattern has developed in the past, that pattern will certainly continue into the future is, permit my saying, I'm quoting, foolish. But such assumptions aren't unusual. It goes on to conclude that to avoid the pitfalls presented in this chapter, you must ask yourself these questions. Who is the source of the information you are asked to accept? What evidence is offered in support of the information? What evidence is missing? Is the conclusion reasonable? What we have done over this issue is a complete misapplication of the statistics that were put out by the West Africa Examination Council. And I think that to some extent, unnecessary politicization of the outcome of the results. We know a prominent politician who went out there and sought to profit from this statistic. And this did not help the situation. Because as we speak now, somebody may have had 5 A's and let's say secure a D7 or an F9. That person's 5 A's will not qualify him to fall within the band of the A1 to C6. Because all it's saying is that we have aggregated those who were able to make grade A1 all the way to C6. And if you look at that, this is where you are comparing apples with apples. So if you want to compare apples with apples here, then we say that comparing A1 to C6, in the year 2006, it was 12.51%. 2007, 10.58%. 2008, 12.95%. 2009, 14.58%. 2010, there were no exams because of the 4-year kind of jump. 2011, 26, 2012, 31.19%. 2013, it dropped to 19.15%. And there is an appreciation, 28.10%. What this means is that from 2006 till 2014, the 28.1% is the second best.
We're
the best
celebrating mediocrity.
The best. Oh, that's a different. Is disrupting. The best taking place in 2012. The question is, will you want your son, your fellow Ghanaian, to write the WASI exams and come out with this kind of results?
No.
The obvious answer is no. You understand? I would prefer a situation where it is far more improved, but it is the competition between the A1s let's say to the C6, that will determine who will gain admission to the tertiary institutions. Let me also state that the fact that you do not gain admission to a tertiary institution doesn't mean you have been genetically programmed to fail. There are some people who will do very, very well without proceeding to tertiary institutions. Which is why, if someone questions, how come there are so many investments being pushed in the area of education, but we are still, even though we are seeing improvements over the years, but this is where we are. Some are also as a matter of gestational period. And I'll cite just one example. Some few years ago, the number of pupils who were sharing one textbook were 3 pupils to 1 textbook. We have been able to reverse this. As we speak now, it is 4 textbooks.
And still same resource?
No.
Virtually no value?
Wait, you are mixing it. Listen to Sanders. You are mixing it. Now it is 4 textbooks to 1 pupil. The question is, if it is at the pupil level, be mindful that I have not said student. This thing manifested just about 2 years ago. It will take time for these pupils to become students and for them to write the WASI exams. And so there are interventions that are being put in place as we speak now, even in terms of teachers going out there to teach and all that as a result of improved supervision. That is also improving with the collaboration of NAT, INAGRAT, and all that. These things will obviously take time to mature. And so I'm very, very confident that even though this is the second best since 2006, the interventions that we have put in place, like converting the textbook to pupil ratio, which was very, very deplorable, to a much more enhanced form, as the years go by, we will be able to reap from these. Let me also say that as parents, we also have a role.
You were saying, for example, that Nanado sought to benefit from.
I didn't mention Nanado.
But he's the one we know he spoke about it. Yeah. Did he speak fact? Because as we know, I'm asking, did he speak fact or he did not? When we know that the fact is that 28% have qualified for higher education, is that fact or not fact?
If he proceeds to compare that under the President Kufuor administration, it was better, and the figures as we have them here, as I have read, 2006, 12.51%, as compared to 2014.
You're using what? You're using the 6s, A1, or you're using 7 as well.
Listen, listen. He spoke to a statistical figure that had been put out, which was 28.10%, A1 to C6. So for him to jump to that hasty conclusion by comparing this figure with the days of President Kufuor clearly meant that he was confining himself to A1 to C6. And we have also teased out A1 to C6, 2006, 12.51%, 2007, 10.58%, 2008, 12.95%, which is why I'm saying that it is the same thing which led him to court, which is making him confused there again. Statistics here.
No, we are distorting.
We are not distorting at all. It is misuse of statistics. Misuse of statistics.
Then you let the
Sanders
debate degenerate
into
something we don't want.
You see, what I wanted you to speak to was the fact that what he spoke was fact.
It was not fact. He was comparing this.
It was fact.
28%.
It is not fact.
28%.
It is not
have qualified for higher education this year. Period.
Good. No, he didn't just confine himself to that. He said that under President Kufuor, more people qualify to enter.
Thank you very much.
This is where it is not true. It is not true. 40%.
You are talking about in 7 subjects.
Pass in 7 subjects.
No,
You are telling us 7 includes 6.
It doesn't mean they'll go to university. No, it doesn't mean they'll go to university.
47% passed in 2007. 28%
the point is that I ask for money. When you're making your references, are you using those who passed in only 6, or you are adding those who pass in 7 and even 8 and 9? Is that what you're doing?
You see, when you get between A1 to E8, you are deemed to have passed.
Thank you.
But to go to the university, you need to get A1.
We have said that over and again. We take a break here. We take a break here. We'll be right back. Thank you very much. You're welcome back. You're welcome back. And this is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. And on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Briefly, let's go to Charles Bawadua, who is a legal practitioner and is lawyer for UTAG. As we talk about students, those who have passed and are going to school, well, unfortunately, somehow, the universities are still not opened. It's not exactly about Ebola. So Nooks insists that it's not about the scare of Ebola, but it's because the UTAG is still on strike. Charles, good afternoon, morning, and welcome to Newsfile. Hello, Charles.
To you, your listeners, viewers, and panelists.
All right. Somehow, POTAG, who had also been on strike for so long, have managed to reach an agreement with the government. They are resuming, so Polytechnic students can now heave a sigh of relief and go back to the classroom. How they catch up with what they have lost, we don't know how they're going to do that. But we are hoping that we do not have the same situation with the universities. What is the status of the universities teachers strike now?
Thank you. You see, like you just said, there is no agreement. But after the last meeting, I can say that there has been some progress made. The situation is a bit nebulous, so one is not able to say clearly what the position is. What has happened is that it would appear that government has moved a little bit towards UTAG. UTAG has also moved a little bit. There will be a meeting on Tuesday, and I believe, given from what happened at the last meeting that we held, that there might be some conclusion, but so far there's nothing yet.
I see. You indicated that you were going to court.
Yes, we have notified the government as required under Section 10 of the State Proceedings Act that we will proceed to court. But in the meantime, if government is able to resolve it, there will be no reason to go to court if our problems are resolved.
What are the indications you are picking? That you are not likely to go to court?
No, I will not say so. There is still nothing to rely on to say we are not likely to go to court. The court option is still there. But let me say that members of UTAG are very eager to go back to the classroom. And if their conditions of service are not, unlawfully infringed upon, if their requirements are met, if their demands are met, if their grievances are settled, certainly they will go back to the lecture theatre.
What are they demanding? For those of us who have not been following, what are they demanding?
Surely, I'm sure that the book and research allowance has now become a phrase in every home. They are demanding the payment of the 2013-2014 academic year book and research allowances, which have not been paid. They are also demanding that 2014 be paid. The allowance is such that it ought to be paid at the beginning of the year, because it's from this allowance that they obtain their tools for the teaching. Then they also want the way clear. You will recall that government have stated that they have abolished, scrapped, or removed the book and research allowance. Then, if that is so, obviously it contravenes the condition of service that fair wages represented government signed with UTAG. So they are concerned about the future. They are saying that if there should be any change in their condition of service, then of course the law requires that it should be negotiated on the negotiation table. It does not take one party in a collective agreement to say that I'm varying this and that without consulting or even seeking the consent of the other party. I think this is very clear. This is what UTAG is aiming for.
I see.
For now, I believe that from what happened at the last meeting, government is ready to pay 2013, 2014. But the future is what is important now. It's not clear what the future will look like.
So government is meeting you halfway. Why don't you get back into the classroom and look at the rest of it?
No, government is only saying that what has accrued to my clients, UTAG, they are ready to pay. And of course, they cannot say they will not pay what is due them. But the important thing is, what about the collective agreement that government has unilaterally varied without their consent and without their knowledge?
With the establishment of the National Research Fund, that's what your concern is?
Yes, the National Research Fund is a government policy, but it should not adversely affect the conditions of service of workers.
It should be mutually negotiated. Thank you very much. Charles Bawadria. He's a labor lawyer. And on this issue, I'm going to pick just 2 comments briefly, and then we'll move on to discuss the rest of them. Doc, what do you want to say?
Yes. Fortunately, government is meeting UTAG. Meetings have gone on, and even next week, very early next week, either Monday or Tuesday, the meetings will continue. Let me also put on record that government has not abolished the book and research allowance. It is the mode of assessing it that is being varied in terms of assessing it through the National Research Fund. And I will say that,
whatever it is, it changes the terms.
Very good, but it is not accurate to state categorically that it's been abolished. That is the point.
But you understand that they have a point when they insist that for anything to be done to their terms of conditions, it ought to be mutual.
Mutually, yes. Which is why meetings are ongoing. Which is why the Professor Mreku Jima committee also even engaged the lecturers and all that.
That ought to have been the starting point.
Yes, it was. The Professor Mreku Jima committee engaged them. It was. It was. Let me also add that, let's face it, the books that are purchased in the present condition, using you as an example, the lapel that you may be using here at Multi-TV, when you are exiting one day, you will not go away with it. In terms of the nature of the book allowance that we have it now, when you pay it and the books are purchased, they do not go to the libraries. They become the individual properties of the beneficiaries of the book and research allowance. I think that
their promotions depend on the research they do.
Which is why even a better way of funding research will even enhance promotions. I am very, very confident that with the discussions that are ongoing, in the same manner that POTAC felt that government had met them at least halfway, we will have an amicable resolution to this, particularly as online resources are also being made available in this present day. Example being about $35 million that the Ministry of Finance helped the University of Ghana to assess in terms of establishing an online platform to aid research and all.
Okay,
we should be moving.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Doc. All right, so Kuku, maybe briefly from you, then we'll move on.
It's as simple as that. Government's approach towards this thing was wrong-headed. It's as simple as that. You are dealing with people who have some intelligence, intellect, who are committed to their profession. You want to vary things. You say you are not abolishing, but you are varying and doing so unilaterally. And that's where the import of the point is. Okay, it was wrong-headed. We all want a national research fund. But first and foremost, these people have conditions of service that is documented, that is recorded as an agreement. You don't start creating this problem. Sometimes I wonder why government, and in particular this government, gets itself into such messy situations.
Let's get